Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. It's Funmi, Principal Attorney speaking here. So today's review is going to be on eBay. So I like looking at the privacy posture of different organizations and basically getting an insight into what it is that organizations are doing in order to comply with the data protection laws based on how they use personal data. So let's take a look at eBay's cookie notice. So this is really important because it gives consumers of eBay services insight into how they use cookies, web beacons, and similar technologies. And appropriately so, we can see that eBay references this document as a cookie notice. Now, a notice just tells individuals about how cookies are utilized by eBay. Now, I am intrigued because this notice was last updated February 23rd, 2022, which was 3 years ago. Now, the reason why this is intriguing to me is because obligations for organizations change as and when there are changes to the privacy laws that are pre-existing and there are brand new privacy laws that are enforced. Now, what I can say from a US perspective is there have been several data protection laws that have come into force since this date, February 23, 2022. Now, what that means for a company like eBay is their notice should reflect what the data protection laws are now. Now, it may be one of two things. It may be that their cookie usage on the site has not changed since this date. But you know what has changed? The data protection laws that are applicable to eBay. eBay is a multinational organization and eBay operates in several geographies globally. Now, this means a couple of things, not just in the United States, but the obligations that eBay has are applicable based on the personal data for the residents where they process personal data. Now, eBay is very popular in England, but I know that eBay is also utilized in the United States, and that's just 2 geographies. Now, I'm pretty sure if this was the privacy notice audit, we would be able to see all of the geographies where eBay operates. My presumption is that eBay operates globally. So eBay needs to look at all of the changes to the data protection laws globally and make sure that its cookie notice aligns with its obligations in those countries. And I can tell you for a fact as a practitioner, the laws are always changing and there's always brand new laws every single year. One of the things I do as privacy counsel is I always give advice to my clients on these are the changes you need to take note of based on how you use personal data. Now, I don't know every single identifier. We can only go off of what we can see from eBay generally. I know eBay allows individuals to sell goods and services on its platform. So before we look at the cookie notice, I just wanted to make note organizations need to make sure that their cookie notice reflects their obligations so that the representations they're making to their consumers are accurate based on how they use cookies, okay? So we know here that they have users in the European Economic Area, Switzerland, and the UK. I just mentioned this. It's very popular in England. And there's a button here to withdraw your consent, which is excellent. So I'm actually going to click it. Okay, great. So it's interesting that even though I am accessing this site from the United States, I still have the opportunity to withdraw my consent, which to me states that eBay has probably taken a Eurocentric approach to data protection, okay? Because their obligations to US residents is not the same as their obligations to residents in the European Economic Area, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. So when you use our services, okay, I'm just going to quickly check that they've defined what constitutes a service they have. So their services refer to website application services, products, and tools. This is really, really necessary for all organizations to put out because if a consumer wants to understand how cookies are being utilized, the first thing they're going to want to know is scope. Does this notice even apply to me? So we and authorized third-party providers make use of cookies and similar technologies. The cookies used in connection with the services have various functions. They may be necessary for the provision of services. They help us to technically enhance our service. They help us to recognize you so we can improve your user experience. They enable us to show you more relevant ads. Now, you can visit our dedicated settings page to determine whether you consent to the use of cookies and similar technologies. So I'm actually going to open this because I am intrigued about withdrawing of my consent. What exactly have I withdrawn? Because you can see it just says consent was successfully withdrawn. Related to what? So let's go to the dedicated settings page. So this is very interesting and very useful. I love how easy it is to maneuver across the eBay websites. So I presume that when I clicked this withdraw your consent, you can see below that I have been opted out of several different purposes. Like, the first purpose here is to store and/or access information on my device. The second is use limited data to select advertising. You can see it says no. And if I had not selected withdraw your consent, I presume that this would say yes. Now, obviously I cannot go back, but I've just changed my setting and it was easy for me to select yes, and it'll be just as easy for me to select no. So I would say that this is really good. One thing that Privacy Counsel generally will do is they'll look at all these purposes. One, ensure that every purpose aligns with what the business says they do. So if your business is selling particular goods and services, you need to have a purpose before you process any personal data, and you need to have a legal basis to rely on in order to fulfill that purpose, okay? So they've listed all their purposes here, which is really good. I'm intrigued if these are purposes that align with the February 23, 2022, or if there are additional purposes that need to be added to this section here. I'm just going to scroll to the top and the bottom and see if this aligns with the date. So there is no date on this one, which is interesting. It may be, in fact, that eBay actually has additional purposes in 2025 and that both sites need to be updated, both this webpage advertising and related preferences and also the cookie notice. So which service providers do we cooperate with? Some of our partners use cookies, web beacons, or other similar technologies to deliver content tailored to your interests, including ads on and off our properties. So you as a consumer can actually read what's being transmitted to these service providers. And if it's something that you align with, you can actually go back to this advertising and related preferences and you can select on. Most consumers won't read either of these, but based on the fact that this is generally what I provide as a service for clients, I think it's really important to educate not just consumers, but also companies on what they need to comply with in terms of the data protection laws. So you have these choices again. Let me scroll to the top. Okay, so you can withdraw your consent in many different places on this notice. I think that's really very excellent, making it very easy for consumers to withdraw their consent as they read the notice and as they understand what is applicable and what eBay is doing with their data. And one thing I forgot to mention is that cookies are considered personal data, which is why from a transparency perspective, we can see that eBay has provided us notice about their privacy practices. Okay, this is quite short. I will say that it's really excellent that there are 2 sections that you can review. It's also really excellent that there's a button where consumers can withdraw their consent. If I had any recommendations, it would be to make sure that this is still applicable in 2025. And then making sure that any representation here about the purposes aligns with what eBay is doing in 2025 as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this review. I like looking at cookie notices to see what other organizations are doing and how they're complying with the data protection laws, and I'll see you in another review.